Hello everyone, my name is Zach Nutter and I am making a video about gun safety today. The reason I wanted to do this video is one, for class. I'm part of a victimology class at Baldwin Wallace University, and ever since coronavirus hit, we've been taking online classes. So it's been kind of rough to do the volunteer hours, which is a program that we were supposed to do 15 hours of. Volunteering at different organizations in the community in Cleveland, but obviously we can't do that anymore. So it's kind of a do what you want kind of thing, try to impact the community in a positive way. So I decided to do a gun safety program, or video, sorry, not program. The reason I want to do that is because while I was at Baldwin Wallace, I worked at a gun store called Fin Feather Fur Outfitters in Middleburg Heights. And my last few shifts there were pretty crazy. We had lines outside, about 300-400 people deep, 3-4 hour wait to get into the store, and a lot of people bought guns. I sold about 100 plus guns, I don't know how many, over the course of 3 8-hour shifts, and it was nonstop, boom, boom, boom. But one thing I noticed that was really concerning, even for me, someone who's pro-gun, is that a lot of these people didn't know what they were doing with guns, did not know. They're basically first-time gun buyers. A lot of them were even people who may not have even walked into our store, or wouldn't have walked into our store before, especially before coronavirus hit. A lot of people freaked out, thought they needed a gun right then and there, and just went and bought the cheapest thing they could buy for home defense, to defend themselves, whatever the case may be. So the reason I'm making this is hopefully to inform some of those people how to properly handle, use, maintain, and operate a firearm so that nothing bad happens to them on accident or on purpose, or they don't break any laws on the way home. So I have my personal collection broken out here. It's about 8 guns. One I'm not going to show because it's pretty much a repeat. The first one I am going to show you is loaded, and the reason it is loaded is my carry gun. This is a Glock 19, Generation 4, but that really doesn't matter for these purposes. It's the most carried gun, owned gun, I should say, most owned gun in the world. It's a very, very practical pistol. It is a semi-automatic, which means every time you pull the trigger one time, one bullet comes out. Fully automatic is where you hold the trigger back and bullets fly out. That is the difference there between fully and semi-automatic, for those of you who may not have known. All right, the reason this gun's loaded is because it is one of my carry guns. I have another carry gun I'm going to show you that's slightly different. I'll explain the differences when we get there. I'll put them side by side. First thing I want to point out before I even take the gun out is, what's this thing right here, right? This is a outside the waistband holster. It's by C&G Holster Company. One thing you might know or notice is that it is hard plastic. That is a material called Kydex. The reason I carry Kydex, and I think basically everybody should carry Kydex, or at least leather, is that this is molded to the gun. You might notice that there are lines in that holster that are exactly like the gun is. That means it is going to click in and stay in firmly. I can't get it out just by yanking on it like that. It's not going to fall out like that. The reason that is like that is because when you're carrying it, obviously you don't want it to come out when you don't want it to. So it's a nice way to snugly secure your firearm while you're walking around, and you don't want to pull it out. Hopefully you never have to pull it out when you're walking around with it, okay? So, all right, a few things about the Glock now. So obviously you have to kind of really pull it out. You'll notice that one, it has about a 4-inch barrel. It is a double stack firearm. I'm not going to point it at myself, but you'll notice that this trigger is in the forward position. Right now I'm going to show everybody how to properly unload a gun, because there is one in the chamber and there's a full magazine loaded, okay? which means this gun will hold 15 rounds of ammunition, 9mm. And if you have one in the chamber, you can still carry a full magazine. That means 15 rounds in the magazine and one in the chamber, totaling 16 rounds, okay? So, the proper way, I'm going to turn this around, proper way to unload a firearm is to first eject the magazine, which is going to be that button right there. So, you're going to push that button straight in, and you'll notice the mag will fall out. And I'm going to break down what these bullets are for you in just a second, okay? So we're going to put that up there. So right now, this gun's still loaded. That's one mistake people commonly make. They think the magazine's out, the gun's unloaded. The gun gets obviously lighter when you take the mag out, holding all those rounds. But you always need to, and always another thing, keep your finger off the trigger at all times, even if the gun is unloaded. I'll tell you a little story in a minute. I'm not going to mention any names, but a lot of times people forget that there's one in the chamber. They'll pull the trigger and they won't mean to discharge their weapon. That's called a negligent discharge, okay? So that's something you don't want to do. So the first step is take your magazine out. Then finger off the trigger like that right there. You're going to pull the slide back and the round will pop out, okay? So right there, I ejected my 9mm round, which is right there. Now this gun is unloaded and I'm free to do whatever I want with it. Well, not really. You shouldn't point it at anybody still or anything like that. But it is unloaded safely now. It's a safe firearm. You can see right there that there is nothing in the chamber, no bullet, and obviously no mag in the gun. So completely empty right there. Alrighty. So the story I was going to tell you is, I'm not going to mention any names. If you're viewing this from the BW community, you might know this story. My freshman year, there was something happened where a few guys were driving around in a car, and they had a gun in the car, and they were just goofing off, young kids. And one of the kids was pointing the gun at his friend. There was no magazine in the gun. There's still one in the chamber. That's one thing you got to keep in mind in this story. And they were just thinking they were cool, had a gun and everything. And he pointed the gun at one of his friends and he pulled the trigger. And luckily that individual was okay. Nothing terrible happened where anyone lost their life or anything. But that's one thing where you always have to be very careful. You have to be a responsible gun owner. If you're going to carry a gun, always have a CCW license. And I do not have my wallet on me, but I'll show you guys what that looks like after the video. I'll show you what a CCW license looks like. But just be smart. Always keep your finger off the trigger like that. You want to have good trigger discipline. That is finger off the trigger, trigger discipline. I'm not like this, I'm like this, okay? So you always want to make sure you drop the mag first, unload the gun, okay? This is the only gun in the whole video that's going to have rounds in the chamber. I have one other gun over here that has a magazine in it. That's just to show you the mechanics of the gun, okay? What else do I want to tell you? All right, the Glock 19, that's pretty much all I'm going to tell you about that one right there. Now let me go over to my other concealed carry handgun, and I'm going to kind of compare them both for you, okay? So I'm going to pop this guy back in this holster. So another thing is I'll let you watch me put this in its holster. So the holster's empty right now. Listen to the sound it makes. This is why I carry this material. It's in there. It's not coming out. You have to really pull it out to get that holster off. And then it's an outside the waistband, you can tell, because there's belt loops right here, one, and then another one right here. You put your belt through that and it would sit on your hip like that down there. But I was just showing you because my hip is not in the camera. Okay, another gun. This one is completely unloaded, but we're still going to treat it like it's a loaded firearm, obviously, okay? Because we want to be responsible. All right, so another CNG holster, Kydex holster, same thing. It's just molded to a different gun. One thing you might notice, is that this gun is a lot smaller. I'll put the Glock in this side by side, but they're pretty much the same thing underneath it all, okay? This is a Smith & Wesson Shield. And I've done some work to it, so it's a little bit different than it normally would be. Okay. But you might notice that this gun is a lot smaller than the Glock, so we'll do this right here. Notice how that gun is a lot smaller. Really where it makes the difference is that this gun is a lot thinner. So you'll see how much thinner that gun is right there. Okay, that's because concealed carry, you kind of want to carry a small gun. You don't want to carry around a cumbersome brick, much like the Glock 19, all the time. I call that my winter carry gun. I carry that in the winter time more. But, you know, smaller gun for all the time is better because there's something called printing. And that's where if you carry the gun underneath your shirt on your hip, a lot of times that bigger gun will bulge or print a lot more and show underneath your shirt. And that's why people carry a smaller gun, so they can kind of carry it in maybe even a different spot that they wouldn't be able to carry a bigger gun. And that way it's less visible to other people walking around. There are a few features on this gun I want to point out. One more thing about the Glock right here is this gun does not have a external safety. It has internal safeties, whereas if you drop it, the gun's not going to fire. That's something Glock has put in their guns all the time, but it does not have any external switch-like safety. You can't knock it on, knock it off. The Smith & Wesson does. But one thing you want to know about safeties is they can always come off. So I'll show you this gun's safety right here. So you click it up and you can click it off. So when you're walking around with this all the time, you don't want to rely on that safety, which is why I say your best safety is a good holster, like the CNG holster. There's a lot of different models of Kydex holster on the market. Some are better than others. Some just aren't molded really right. Some are harder to put together. These are pretty easy. You buy them like this, you put the gun in, story's over. So you carry it around like that. So this gun does have a safety. I do not carry it with the safety on. So I bought this gun used at my store that I worked at. And I bought it because it was cheaper than the newer one was. And it already had a few additions on, which I'm going to point out to you. One I can't really show you, unfortunately, very well. I might be able to cover it up and let you see. But this gun has something called night sights. So if I cover that sight up, you see how it kind of glows green? That means that is because of their night sights, and it has something called tritium. They have tritium pods on them. Tritium is a radioactive material that when there is no light present, they glow a bright green color. So because of that, you can carry it at night and you can still see if you have to pull it out at night and defend yourself. That's why people carry guns. You want to be able to see, you want to be able to make a good shot when you're in one of those situations. Hopefully no one ever is, but people are every day. That's the sad reality. So you want to make sure you can make an accurate and good shot when you're in that situation. The other thing is I don't have another one to show you right now, but it has an upgraded trigger, much lighter trigger in it. The reason for that is that I personally like a light trigger, which means by light, I mean it takes less weight to pull it. So typically people are more accurate with that kind of trigger, which is the reason why it's in this gun. I put that in there and I've been happy with it ever since. A few other additions that this gun has. Let me kind of go into more detail about it. So it has a 8-round magazine. It'll also come with a 7-round, a smaller magazine that sits flush on the gun. You might notice that that magazine is a little extended. The other one will not be. It'll sit right about here on the gun, so the grip will be a little shorter. I have bigger hands, so I personally prefer the larger magazine. But yeah, so it has an 8-round mag with it. So you take that out the same exact way you would take out the Glock's magazine. There's a little button right here on the left-hand side of the gun. You push that in, and the magazine comes out like that. And you'll notice they even put a little number 8, if you can see that, right next to that last hole. That lets you know how many rounds are there. But just like the Glock, you can have 8 rounds in the mag, as well as 1 round in the chamber. This gun does not have a round in the chamber. Like I said before, it is completely empty. Completely empty. but we're still practicing good trigger discipline because we do not want the gun to go off, like in that unfortunate story I told you a little bit earlier. So yeah, that's the Smith & Wesson Shield. Smaller size gun, easier to carry, less visible to other people, has the night sights on it. That's a plus for when you may have to defend yourself in a dark place. Home defense, that's a good thing too. If you have your house broken into or something like that at night, you don't want to flick the lights on and give away your position, so you can make a good shot with those night sights so you can see your sight picture. Real quick, I'm going to show you very briefly how these guns break down, how you take them apart to clean them. A lot of negligent discharges happen when people are trying to clean their guns. So I'm going to show you with the Shield real quick. I'm not going to show you with the Glock just because I don't want to keep everybody here all night. So basically I'm going to show you with it this way. Right here, you have your takedown lever, which is right here. Here is your slide lock. That's going to be important. Those two are going to be important. And then back here, you have your safety, okay? So the first thing you want to do with your gun, this gun, when you're taking it down, is you want to slide the slide straight back like that. It will automatically catch on an inserted empty magazine, okay? So when the magazine is inserted into the gun and empty, the slide will catch back. If there were rounds in here, it would go like this, just like that. And the way I can do that on an empty magazine is I just ride my finger on the top of the slide block so it does not come up and catch the slide. So again, you want to pull back on the slide right there. All right, now you want to take your magazine out. Don't worry, the gun will not fly forward, the slide will not fly forward on you. It's already locked back, that lever's already in place. Now you want to take your takedown lever right here, and you want to push that down to the 6 o'clock position. It just swivels like that. A lot of guns take down this way. That's why I'm showing you with this gun and not the Glock, because the Glock's a little bit rarer of a takedown method, even though a lot of guns do share that with the Glock. I'm just going to show you with this one. Now I'm going to show you two ways to break this down. I'm going to talk about one way that Smith & Wesson's put a little lever inside here, which is yellow. I don't know if I'll be able to have you see it or not, but there should be a little yellow lever right here on the back face of the gun. What they want you to do is take like an ink pen or something with a really small point hole, put that over the head of that lever and set it down in the gun. I do not do it that way. The reason they do that is because I'll show you. So the way I take this gun down is like I've told you already, slide the slide back, take the magazine out, make sure the gun's unloaded. Make sure the barrel is unloaded. There's nothing in the barrel, and make sure the magazine is out of the gun. Now that you have that done, you take your takedown lever and you slide it down like that. And then you're going to hit your slide release button or lever, which is right here. You see that? That guy right there. And you're going to take it and you're going to let the slide down on the gun. You may notice that if you have one of these, this is a little peculiar right here, that the gun is not in battery. That means the gun's not sitting like it normally would. It's a little bit more forward than it usually is. That means the gun's ready to take down. This is why you want to make sure that the gun is unloaded. This is where a lot of negligent discharges happen with people, especially first-time gun owners that have not been to a class or something like that. That's why this video is being made, so people have something to reference when they're trying to do these things with their gun and they don't know what they're doing. So then you're going to simply pull the trigger and the slide will pop right off. All right, so now you have your polymer lower frame where all the internals of the gun are. Trigger, everything else. I'm going to set that down here. And then you have your slide with your barrel in it. Now I'm going to show you how to take the barrel out of this. It's very simple. You'll have a recoil spring right here at the front of the gun. Almost every handgun will have that just like that. Now you're going to run your finger to the bottom of that spring and you're going to push up and the spring will just simply fall right out of the gun. It does not take a lot of force to do that. You simply just have to give it a little nudge on the back end of it, and it'll pop right out. I'm gonna set that down here so I don't lose it. Now you have your barrel right here. This is the bottom of your barrel. You'll notice it goes up and goes right down, okay? So now you're going to take that barrel and you're going to, it just slips right out. You push it forward and bring it back like that. Push forward, bring back. This is how you would clean your gun. So you have all this stuff disassembled. You would get a cleaning kit. Hoppe's 9 is a good place to start. They're probably the biggest brand name in cleaning kits. But basically you have a little wand that you would take with a little brush on the end. You dip it in some gun cleaning solution and you would run that down your barrel with a little brush or a little cotton swatch on it. That way you get all of the gunpowder residue, and this does need cleaned a little bit, but you need to run that down and get all that gunpowder residue. That way you can preserve your gun. Does not lubricate. Lubricating is a different thing. I'm going to show you how to do that. But it cleans it. It gets all that carbon out of there, all that nasty dirt that bullets produce when you fire them through a gun. And typically I clean my guns every 300-400 rounds I put through them. This probably has 150 rounds, so it's a little dirty, but it's not to the point yet where I'm going to take 30 minutes out of my day and clean it. So to get it back in, I did that without showing you. I apologize. You want to take your barrel. You have the barrel's hole right here that it'll sit in. You simply take it, you place it in that hole, and you push it forward. So now it looks like this. It's going to look really silly with the barrel sticking out. And you're going to just drift it straight back, and it'll seat itself. Don't try to force it. If it doesn't seem to go in the right way, just push it up and push it back down. It should sit all the way down, all the way back, and all the way down, okay? Then you take your recoil spring. You'll notice one end has a polymer black or something like that end, and the other one is metal. The metal one goes to the back of the barrel right here, okay? So you have your recoil springs hole right here. You're going to put that black end in, and you're simply going to push it up and let it, it'll seat itself right in front of the barrel, like so. Takes a little bit of wiggling to get it in the right spot, but as long as it is seated against that barrel on the front like that, you're golden. You're good to go. All right, so now getting the gun back together. Now you have two ends, right? Can't use it like this. So every gun has a little track on it. You might be able to see that. Sorry, this is on my cell phone, so the video quality is not great. But and you also have a little track on the base of your firearm. You're going to line those two up just like that. Let's probably show you that way. Line them up, and you're going to push the gun all the way back. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. Some folks have a little bit of a struggle with this. You have to manually push up on your slide lock lever to get the slide to lock all the way back so it'll go back together correctly, okay? So you push all the way back, and then I gotta do it this way. Push all the way back and push up at the same time, and it'll catch. You can manually put that on. Usually when the gun is empty with an inserted empty magazine, it'll catch itself. And then when there's bullets in the magazine, it'll fly back forward. It won't catch. That way it loads one into the chamber. That's how the gun will load itself. But once you have it in this position, all you do, you take your takedown lever, you give it a little push. It'll snap itself back into its original position. And then you do your slide release lever, and you're back in business, okay? So that means you just cleaned your gun, it's back together. Where'd that magazine go? And you're good to go. There it is. And then you would take your magazine and you would just slip it back into the gun. It'll click itself in. And that is my crash course on how to disassemble and reassemble a Smith & Wesson Shield. A lot of guns are like this. Some of the takedown levers may go up. Some of them may go down. Some guns you have to have a tool you have to take a pin out. You have to pull it straight out. Please look up YouTube videos on your specific gun. Look up in your owner's manual. Every gun should come with an owner's manual. If you bought a used gun like I did, this gun did not come with an owner's manual. They have it on the gun manufacturer's website. They have all their models, even if they don't make it anymore. You just have to look up that model, owner's manual, and it should be on there. It should be somewhere online. Look it up and get to know your gun before you start doing stuff like this with it, because you don't want to be the guy to put a hole in his wall or worse when you're just trying to clean your gun, okay? So that is the handguns. I guess I'll show you how to do the Glock real quick. It's kind of hard to show, but I will try to show you, okay? So same thing. So this has two takedown levers right here. So you see that little, looks kind of like a switch. It has them on both sides of the gun, okay? There's really no good way for me to show you this on a video. The best way for you to learn it is to do it, but I'm going to kind of walk you through what to do. So I put my hand like this, my right hand, and I orient the gun like this in my hand. Now I'm going to go like this because I have to do it this way to be able to do it. But you take the gun back. So you would go like this with your hand. You pull back and push your thumb forward so that slide of that gun will creep back on you. You don't push it all the way back. That's not how you do these kind of guns. You just get it back a little bit like that. And then you take your other hand, your left hand, and you would push both of those pins down. And now that both those pins down, you let the slide back forward. And then you would pull forward on the slide like that. See how that's pulling forward? Make sure the gun is unloaded. Obviously, this gun is unloaded. You saw me do it on the video. The bullet is right there. That was in the gun. But you pull forward and you pull the trigger and the gun's apart. Same thing. You'll notice this has a recoil spring and it has a barrel underneath the recoil spring. Pop that out, pop the barrel out. It's the same deal. It is a little bit easier to put back together. You don't have to push up on that takedown lever, which you can see popping up right there as I do it. All you have to do with a Glock or something that has a Glock takedown, which is what that's called, you'll know right away. You'll either have a lever like the Shield had, or you'll have a switch like the Glock has. And you'll know exactly what you have right away. But again, you line up the little tracks straight back, and all you have to do is get it past like that, and it is golden. No magazine in the gun. That's why it isn't catching on its own. If you want to catch it on its own, you have to push back and push up on that takedown lever, and it'll lock straight down. Okay, so that's handguns. I have one more handgun to show you. It's a little bit more of a shooting gun, one that I take to the range and have fun with. It's never one I would carry, and I will show that to you now just to complete the handgun portion of the video. So it is a Smith & Wesson 357 revolver. This is the model 66. This was made back in the 80s. I'm just going to do a real brief overview of this one. Revolvers are very simple guns in a sense where there's a lot less going on inside of it. So you have a hammer right here, and I'll show you that this gun is unloaded. I'll show you how to get the cylinder out too. So this is called the cylinder. This is your cylinder's release. So you'll push that forward on almost every revolver. They'll have this kind of method. You push that forward, and then from the back side of the gun, it'll always go out left. It'll always come out like that. So you push forward and you push out, and that gun is unloaded. You can see it right there. No bullets in the cylinder. So then you will close it. If you have one of these, just a quick PSA, don't fling it closed like they do in the movies. Press it closed. The reason you want to do that is because this little arm right here, it's going to bang against a solid steel frame when you do that, and it's going to bend or chip that arm, and then your gun's going to be broken, and that's no fun. A broken gun is just a paperweight, so you don't want to do that. All right, so this is obviously not a gun you would really carry. It's a pretty long barrel, 6 inches. The Glock was a 4-inch slide. That's about as big as I would ever carry. Smith & Wesson Shield is a 3.2-inch slide, so actually 3.3, but obviously a lot smaller. Smith & Wesson shield comes like here on this gun. Glock would come to about there, and obviously this is a 6-inch barrel. So you'll notice there's no slide on this gun. Everything happens right here. So this is your hammer. You cock that back. The wheel or the cylinder will rotate in a counterclockwise motion on this gun at least. And you have a hammer spur right here. That hammer spur goes up into here, which is where the bullet will be sitting. And it'll strike a primer. And I'll show you when I show you some ammo what the primer is. I'm going to do a whole different ammo portion. I'm just kind of going to do the guns here real quick. But that'll hit the primer of the bullet. That'll ignite the gunpowder. And the bullet will pretty much, gunpowder will explode the round down the barrel and out the barrel. That's all that happens on revolvers. There's a lot more going on in polymer frame guns, but that's not the meaning of this video. The meaning is gun safety. But these same principles apply. Finger off the trigger unless you mean to pull it. Now, there are a few things you do have to do with a revolver. I'm going to show you real quick. So these are double and single action guns, which means you can pull the trigger with the hammer back and it'll move that hammer back. You see how it's creeping back like that? And I'm only pulling the trigger so I can kind of demonstrate this for you, okay? So that means that is a double action function. You can also cock the hammer back manually before you shoot. And now if I touch this trigger, which I'm not going to do because I'm practicing gun safety, if I touch that trigger very lightly, that hammer will fly forward. That's single action. The trigger's only doing one job. In double action, the trigger's doing two jobs. It's pulling that hammer back with it and then striking forward. The differences on why you might want to do single action or double action is a double action pull is very long. You see how I have to really pull to get that hammer to go back? It's a lot tougher pull. It's a lot longer pull, which means you can throw your shot off a little more. Single action, you just touch it and go. All right, you just touch and go. And that's a lot more accurate typically. There's less time to flinch and pull your shot off, especially with revolvers. This is a lot more kick than a 9mm handgun would. But that is why it has two functions, which a lot of revolvers do. A lot of polymer frame semi-automatic pistols have a hammer on them. They're called hammer fire. These are striker fire. That's just a little bit different system. But yeah, now one reason I would pull this trigger or put my hand on this trigger is to get the hammer to go back up. I'm going to walk you through this because that's how you decock this hammer back into its normal position, because you don't want to leave your hammer cocked in storage all the time. It might break your hammer spur, which is this little guy right here. And it's just not how you should store the gun. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to press your thumb and bring that hammer as far back as you can all the way to the base of the revolver. And then you're going to pull your trigger in, just that little bit. And then while you're holding the trigger in, you're going to let your thumb slowly creep that hammer forward. So now it is into the gun. It's not firing. It does not strike that primer hard enough to set it off. And then you slowly let the trigger out and it'll reset itself. And that's how you get a hammer to go up. So in fast motion, it's like that, okay? In slow motion, you pull it back, you pull the hammer back, pull the trigger in, and you slowly let the hammer go up, okay? So that is a revolver, pretty simple gun. And that completes my handgun collection. I only have 3 right now, but they're kind of 3 good ones to kind of cover all the bases of handguns. So the next thing I'm going to show you is an AR-15. This is a Smith & Wesson M&P 15. This is the other gun that is somewhat loaded. The reason I have it is because I have the 30-round magazine in here. There is not a round in the chamber, and I will double check, but there is not one in the chamber. And I'm going to kind of walk you through, because this is obviously the big bad gun, right? This is the one that gets, I think, it has a bad reputation and doesn't deserve it. But it also has a lot of people thinking that it's something it's not. And in my opinion, if you live in a urban or suburban area, this is a terrible home defense option. and I'll go into that a little bit why. I might go into some ammo here real quick. But to get the magazine out on an AR right here, you'll have this little button right here on the right-hand side of the gun. Obviously, still, trigger discipline. You don't want to touch that trigger, especially my trigger. It's a really lightweight trigger. Really just touching that thing could set it off. So you want to make sure your best safety is to not pull the trigger, right? So don't trigger the weapon. You're going to push that safety straight in. That magazine's going to pop out, and I have a full 30 rounds of 5.56 ammunition, which is what AR-15s typically shoot. There are a few different variations. Actually, there's a lot of different variations, but you will not typically see anything but 5.56. That's your standard AR-15 round. So I'm going to walk you through how I did that. Okay, so you see a little red charging handle. I've upgraded mine quite a bit. This is not a standard M&P 15, but I've put some blood, sweat, and tears into this, and it's a little bit different than a normal one would be. So I have a red charging handle right here. You take your two fingers like that. You grab that charging handle, and you pull back. And you'll notice right here is where I'm affecting on the gun. That is your bolt carrier group. And you'll notice there's no brass gold round in there, okay? There's no flash of gold. That means the gun is unloaded. And you simply just let it up, okay? So, just kind of walk you through ARs. They're very simple guns. They look big and scary. They look complicated, but they're really not. So, to get this gun to fire is what you would do. You would pull the charging handle back, let it slip forward. That is going to load one round into the chamber if this was a inserted 30-round mag right here. If that was inserted in the gun, it would load one round and you would have 29 more, and you would have 30 rounds to shoot downrange, okay? Now, you would pull the trigger just like that. I'm not going to do that because we're practicing gun safety, but that is the trigger right here. This is your stock. This stock will extend. So that is how you would load that gun to fire. On the other side, you have your safety. This gun does have an external safety. Up is fire, so this gun was not on safety. It will not go on safety if the gun is not charged. And by charged, I mean if you haven't yet put one in the chamber, or it thinks there's one in the chamber, like this. Right now, that gun thinks there's a round in the chamber, so it will allow you to put that gun into safety mode. If I would pull the trigger and fire right now, and then try to put it back on safety, it would think that the gun is empty. If the gun's empty and it knows it's empty, it's not going to let you put it into safety. It's just a feature on the AR-15. So without getting into huge details, I obviously have a scope on mine. I use this thing to hunt. That's one of the things I use my AR for. That's one of the reasons I have it. And then the other reason I have it is it's fun to shoot. It does not have a lot of kick. The rounds are actually in the 22 family, which is one of the smaller rounds you can have in a gun platform. The reason it's different than a 22 is here. I'll get a 22 round out and I'll get an AR round out. One second, bear with me. So, and I have a 22 to show you a little bit later on. That'll probably be the last thing I show you. But this is a 5.56 round that an AR-15 shoots. It is in the same family as the 22 Magnum. This is a Magnum. There's also a long rifle, which will just have a little bit shorter casing, which means less gunpowder, less power, pretty much. But you'll see the size difference in those two rounds. This by no means is a big bullet. This is actually a pretty mid-sized to small bullet. And you'll notice that the diameter of those two bullets is pretty similar. I'll show you it like that. They're in the same family. 22 means that is in relation to the size of the bullet, the projectile. This is a little bit longer projectile. It's 223 or 5.56 is the NATO round. 5.56 or 223 Remington can be used in the AR-15. It's kind of like an interchangeable thing. But They're in the same family. A lot of people think that the AR-15 shoots a huge bullet that does a lot of damage. It shoots a very fast bullet. So when it hits, it will penetrate. And that's really the reason it penetrates a lot more than this little bullet will, because it has less power. This has a little shell casing. This is a pretty decent sized shell casing in relation to the bullet. So it's going at a high rate of speed. Put that bullet back. That bullet back. Going at a pretty high rate of speed, which is why I say do not use these for home defense if you live in a suburban area, an urban area, in an apartment complex, even in a neighborhood, a subdevelopment or something like that. Reason being is that bullet's going to go, and it's not going to slow down very, very quickly. So if you had a home intruder and you had this thing shouldered and ready to go like that, and you shot, it's going to hit him, go through your wall, go through your other wall, out into the street, and it's going to end up in your neighbor's living room. Possibly. It could obviously hit something very massive and stop. But the reason is, if it meets a little resistance, that bullet is not going to stop. So that pretty much puts the AR to bed. We'll go ahead and set that guy down here. And I use it for coyote hunting. I use it for land management. You cannot deer hunt with that rifle in a lot of states. The bullet's too small. That's why they don't want you wounding deer. So they outlawed it in Ohio, which is where I live. But you can still use it in some of the southern states. It's acceptable. I hunt Kentucky personally, and it is still too small for Kentucky. There's a lot of stipulations on what rounds are acceptable where. That's not the purpose of this video, so I will not talk about that. But what I would use for home defense is either a handgun, and let me show you something with the handguns real quick. There's two different types of ammo you can use for your handgun. One is a lot more expensive than the other, but it's a lot safer than the other, and it's what you should use when you're carrying. If you have one loaded up for home defense, you're going to want to use something called a hollow point, which will come in little 25-round boxes like this. I have Hornady Critical Defense. You'll notice that round has a little polymer tip in it. Has a little polymer tip in it, a little rubber tip. It also has serrations all the way around the head of that bullet. That is higher tech than your traditional full metal jacket bullet. I'll show you the difference. So these bullets are the same size. This has a full metal jacket, which means that is one hunk of metal, one singular hunk of metal. This is still one hunk of metal, but it has little cuts in it. What happens is, if this were to hit somebody, it would bust apart. It would send fragments through, which is one, more lethal, and two, it's going to stop a lot quicker than your full metal jacket round will. The reason you should carry with hollow points is because they stop a lot quicker. You won't hit unintended targets downrange. I have that Glock loaded up for home defense here. It is always loaded with one in the chamber, because the safest way to own a gun is, you want a gun for safety, you want one to protect yourself, have it ready. Have it ready to go in a holster or in a little lockbox or something like that that's easily accessible, so you can get it when you need it. Full metal jacket, you don't want to carry with that, because if you shoot, it's still going to pass through that person. It's not going to go as far as the AR-15 bullet will, the 5.56. It's not going to go outside of your house, but it could go through your wall into your kid's room or something like that, and you don't want that to happen. Or on the street, it could go through and hit an innocent bystander that you're maybe trying to protect or help on the other side of the target. So kind of like a screwed up way to put it, but if you're ever in that situation, you don't want to do any damage you don't mean to do, and that's a very real thing some people face. If you carry with these, you're at a risk to yourself and a risk to everybody around you. If you carry with these, there's still a possibility something could happen, but a lot less likely. So that's why people carry with these. Just give you an idea on price, because I know a lot of people just bought a gun and they're looking for bullets to use and they're wondering what they can use and what they can't use. These will probably run you about $24.99 for 25 rounds, so about $1 a round. These you get 50 for $8.99, so these are a lot cheaper. You'll use these at the range. That's why you buy these. You take these to the gun range, you practice with them. They're the same weight, they're going to give you the same feel. These are just a lot safer to carry with, so carry with those. That's what you want to do. So you can use a handgun with hollow points as a home defense, or what I do, a lot of the time, I have two guns really ready to go for home defense, is a shotgun, typically a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge, because it has enough power to really put somebody down, stop them in their tracks, stop them from doing what you don't want them to do, or any illegal activity. This, however, is not the 12 gauge I typically use. That one is currently not with me. It is getting serviced. Had a little bit of a malfunction with it, so I sent it back to the factory. But just for kind of all intents and purposes of this video, this is a 12 gauge shotgun. To kind of give you the basic mechanics, I'm not going to break this down because it's not important to this video. But you have a little, usually on these hunting oriented shotguns, you'll have a little tab right here that goes up into the gun. That lets you get the slide back and then slide forward. Okay, so this is a 12 gauge shotgun. The reason this is considered a hunting shotgun is the length of that barrel. That's a 28-inch barrel. Actually, sorry, that's 24-inch barrel. I have another barrel on the ground over here that's 28 inches. So this is a slug barrel. It's what you would pretty much go deer hunting with. Well, not really anymore. You'll use like a rifle round now, but it's something you could deer hunt with. So it'll shoot a slug, which is a shotgun shell that has a one singular mass in it. It has a slug is just a big hunk of metal that'll go out of a shotgun, traveling at a pretty low velocity compared to a rifle. Won't go as far, it will drop a lot faster, and it won't have the same penetration at range that a rifle round has. But the reason you want to use this for home defense is that they stop pretty quick. So ideally, you would want to do something or use something called buckshot. What I have with me right now is I have birdshot with me, which is another kind of hunting round that you would use. You'd use it for like duck hunting, birdshot. So that's right here. And then I also have slugs right here. I'm going to kind of show you the difference in the ammo real quick. So you'll notice on the slug is red, shot is black. That just happens to be what I have. Easy to differentiate. Some slugs might be blue, some might be yellow. It really depends on what company's ammo you buy. This happens to be Browning. This is Federal. So you'll notice on the slug, there's one big hunk of ammo, or big bullet in there. One big hunk of metal. And that's going to project from the shell, go down range. It's going to stay together. That's not what you should really use for home defense. You might have one slug loaded up behind some other shells in case you really have to get serious with somebody and you want lethal power, because that's going to really put a hurting on somebody. They're not going to have a good day if you hit them with that. But this is birdshot, so this is a lot lighter. What this is going to do is it's going to shoot, and it's going to hit a spread of little BBs, basically, for lack of a better term. It's going to spray a load of BBs out. That can be non-lethal. It's going to hurt somebody, but it can be less than lethal. It's not non-lethal. It can absolutely kill somebody, but and you want to be safe when you're using birdshot. That's not an excuse to be lackadaisical while you're handling a shotgun that has birdshot in it. But it's not going to be as serious of a round to get hit with as a shotgun slug or a 9mm handgun round or a rifle round. It's just not, it's not considered as much. One of the pros to having birdshot in your shotgun for home defense, you'll even hear it. Kind of hear a little rattle in there. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but is it's going to shoot, it's going to spray a little bit. You don't have to be a great shot to hit somebody with birdshot. You can kind of You got them in your sights and there's no one around them. You can shoot, spray, it's going to hit them, and they're not going to want to mess with you anymore after that. But also, it's not going to go through anything. It's going to hit something and it's going to fall. So if I were to shoot this right now at a wall, at a guy who's breaking into my home, and I shot him, it's not going to go through the wall and hurt anybody on the other side. But this is still not the ideal round you should use. What you should use is something called double-aught buck. Basically, it's called buckshot. Instead of having real small BBs, it has a few larger BBs. And that's just going to be a little bit more lethal for whatever you have to deal with in your home. And it's going to have a much more concentrated group as it comes out. So one of the downsides of birdshot is, as a wider spread, you might do some damage to your stuff in your home. And it's not really the ideal thing to use, but double-aught buckshot is what you want to use, ideally for home defense. And ideally, as I segue, in a tactical shotgun. So right now, this is a hunting shotgun because the barrel's so long. Your tactical shotgun will have anywhere from a 16-inch barrel to a 20-inch barrel. And the reason you don't want to be swinging this thing around the halls of your home is, say I'm the home intruder, you're coming down the hallway, you start to swivel, I can grab the barrel and I can disarm you pretty easily because this is like a lever. You're just going to push it straight down. You want something that's a little bit closer to you that you can have a real good grip on, and you can clear around walls a little bit better. I know it sounds really black ops and everything like that. Sounds super tactical, but it's real. I mean, it's going to be easier if that home intruder knows what they're doing to mess with you if you have a longer gun, which is another reason you don't want to use something like a rifle, like an AR or something like that. So yeah, ideally use a tactical shorter shotgun. That's my ideal home defense weapon. It's safest for everybody else around. And it's pretty cheap to shoot too. You can get like a good tactical shotgun for $200-300, and you can load it up. You can put it in like the closet. You can put it in a little lockbox, a little lock safe, something like that. They typically has safeties you can click on if you want. You can buy trigger locks for them. But really, you want that gun to be ready if it has to be ready. So that's one of the reasons people own guns for home defense. A lot of times they have one put up high somewhere or something like that, where if you have kids, they can't get to them. But yeah, something to be cognizant of your situation. If you have little ones running around, obviously don't leave a loaded shotgun in the corner of your room. Get a little safe, have a quick code for it, and get it open so you can protect those kids in another way if there's a home intruder or something like that. So next, I have something that's a little bit different oriented. It's another rifle. I showed you the bullet for it a little while ago. It's the 22 Magnum. I'm showing you these, and I have one more bolt action rifle to show you just because it's pretty cool. This is a Marlin 783 22 Magnum. Obviously, I have it scoped. These are pretty straightforward. They have a safety on them. It's going to be a pretty quick explanation on this gun for you. So, to kind of show you what I did, this is what loads the gun. You would load this gun into the mag tube. You'll notice it has kind of what looks like two barrels extending. One's where you put the ammo, the other one's the barrel of the gun, okay? So you take this, you twist it open. Come on. And you would pull it straight out like that. That's your mag tube rod. I can't think of the name of it right now. Sorry. But now you have your mag tube opened up. And you would take your bullets, and if you can see right here, there's a little cut out in the shape of a bullet. You take your bullets and you drop them straight in like that. You drop them with the butt end of the bullet down first. Don't drop them with the head of the bullet down, because that's not how it's going to follow into the receiver. And then you would take your follower here. That's what's going. And you would click it down and click it over like that. Now that gun has rounds loaded. pretend I put some in. And then you would take your bolt action here, bolt action rifle, and you'd knock it back. That would bring one up into the receiver, and then you'd push it forward and lock it back down. So in quick action, it looks like that. And that would load one up into the barrel. There's a firing pin in there on that bolt that's held back. When you pull the trigger, it'll fly forward, hit the primer, send it down the barrel. Actually, on this one, it's a rim fire, so it would hit the rim of the bullet. A little bit different with the smaller rounds. They don't have a primer like the larger rounds do. So it would go down the barrel that way. And then right here, it's kind of like the AR. You can't put this on safety if the weapon's not charged. That's charging the weapon right there. Loading one in. It thinks there's a round in there. The mechanisms of the gun think that there's a round in the chamber right now. So, get it back. You click it back, fire, forward on safety. So if you happen to buy one of these in the craze of the coronavirus, now you kind of know the basics on how to operate a bolt action rifle. Even though this is a smaller bolt action, a smaller caliber bolt action, a lot of bolt actions are the same. Real quick, you might have one that has a magazine, a lot like the AR did. You're going to have a magazine that feeds up into here. Excuse me. And that is going to be what feeds your chamber instead of a mag tube like this one has. So it's just a different way to do it. It's the same functioning though. You're going to take your mag out and you're going to put your mag in. Imagine that this is a mag-fed gun. And you're going to charge the weapon that's going to bring rounds up from that magazine into the chamber instead from a mag tube into the chamber. Really simple. You know it if you saw it. But it's kind of hard to explain when there's not one here. So I do not have one of those at the moment. I used to, but I sold it. So there's that. Second to last gun I'm going to show you here is a pretty cool one. It's another bolt action. It's really old. It is called a Mosin Nagant. The reason I'm showing this to you is it's another little bit different style of bolt action rifle. It's an older style. So this gun was used by the Soviet Union in World War II. I don't know if it was used in battle or not, but you can see right here there's a little, where is it? Right there, you're not going to be able to see it, but there's a real faint Soviet Union stamp. And one cool thing about this gun is it's serialized matching all around the gun. So the bolt has the same serial number stamped into it. The receiver and the stock all have the same serial number stamped into them, which means since 1942, that's how that gun's been. A lot of these are pieced together with different gun parts. So they take the one bolt out of one that has a cracked stock, they put the bolt in it, and you're good to go. Or they take the bolt out of this one and put it in one with a good stock, pretty much. But obviously it's a wooden gun. It's a really long gun right here. And it shoots a pretty big bullet. It shoots a 7.62 by 54R, which is a... Actually, I have one. I'll show it to you. It's right here. And I'm going to compare it to the AR-15's bullet. Just kind of give you an idea about how small an AR-15's bullet, or AR-15 bullet, or a 5.56 bullet really is. And this isn't even a big weapon or a big bullet. It's a mid-sized round. They get really big. They get about the length of my head. So there's really big rounds out there. But just to give you an idea, on your left, right? Yeah, on your left is the 5.56 NATO bullet, which is what the AR-15 shoots, and on the right is the 7.62 by 54R, which is what that Mosin Nagant will shoot. A lot bigger, a lot more damage, a lot more velocity coming out of that bullet, because you can see the cartridge for that round is almost as big as the bullet of the AR-15. So a lot more carnage happening with that round down range, but you get the idea. Kind of give you an idea about how this gun operates. One second, let me get my ducks in a row here. So same thing. One cool thing about this gun is the bullets load through the gun, which is a little bit of a weird concept. But you see this guy right here? That's an internal magazine, or what acts like an internal magazine. So you would take a round, you'd place it in the chamber, and you would push down on it, and it would load into that right there. What I do with this gun, to be completely honest with you, is I load one round at a time. I take one of those big rounds, I put it up into the barrel, and I close the barrel. I do one at a time just because it's an old gun. I don't shoot it a ton. It's really just kind of a cool thing to me. I've always wanted one. They're a pretty legendary gun. They definitely have their place in history. But yeah, that's what I do. Really simple that way too. But just like the other bolt action gun I showed you before, you pop this up, you pop it down, and you would load your bullet in. You'd take that, you'd push it up, and you'd flop it, lock the bolt back in place. Then, as you pull this trigger, this gun's kind of a cool primitive example. This whole back of the bolt will shoot forward like that, striking the primer, sending the bullet downrange. The other one has a bolt, the firing pin's on the bolt. This one, the bolt actually launches itself forward, and you see it all happen on the gun. I'm not going to show you right now because this is a gun safety video, and I wanted to show you that it's kind of a gun safety, gun mechanics video here. I want to show everybody how these guns work to a point where you will be safe using them. Obviously, one thing about firearms is that you're never going to be perfect, but you can be perfect with safety. There's always different things you can do with your shot, different things you'll learn with what to put on the gun attachments-wise. There's just a bunch of stuff you'll always learn. It's a never-ending process of learning, and it'll make you safer, but there's tried and true things that you should always practice with guns. Like right now, I'm holding this gun. I didn't even notice that I put my finger up there like that, but that's how you do it. You don't hold a gun with your finger on the trigger because stuff can happen. People are forgetful. People are forgetful things. They forget there's a gun around in the chamber, and they cycle the action, and one will pop out, and you'll be like, oh, I didn't know there was one in there. So you always have to be careful. It does not happen a lot, but every once in a while, you know, things get the best of us. So always, always, always keep your finger off the trigger. Don't point them at anybody trying to be cool or funny, because it can get pretty unfunny and pretty uncool real quick. So that's that gun. And the last gun I'm going to show you is one of the more popular rifles out there. This is a Ruger 1022 semi-automatic pistol. So really, this and the AR share a lot of parallels. Obviously, this looks like a pretty basic rifle because it is. So is the AR. It just looks a lot more complicated because of the way it's designed. So this is a little 10-round magazine that sits up in the gun right here. You have your mag release is a little lever right here. You push that forward, and that mag will come out. It's a rotary mag, so you just load the rounds right in there, and it rotates around, and you can go up to 10. They do make a 25-round mag for this, which would stick out kind of with a little curve on it, and that's one way to do it. They sell that and a 15-rounder as well. So I just have the 10. It's a little plinking gun, target practice, stuff like that. Really low recoil. The only guns that really have a high recoil that I have here with me today are the Mosin Nagant, the one I just showed you, and the shotgun will have a pretty heavy kick to it. So obviously this is a scoped gun. You're going to have crosshairs down the scope, magnifies the target, makes it a lot easier to hit. But like I said before, this is a semi-automatic rifle. So right here you have your charging handle. You would pull that back, let it go forward. That charges your weapon right there, okay? So that would load one into the mag. And then down here on the trigger guard, you have a cross bolt safety. So right now, it's black. Black means your safety is on. So on is anything. A real good slogan to live by is, see that little red ring? Maybe not. Right there. I have a little red ring around that little knob on the safety. Red is dead. That is the slogan you should live by. So if you see red, that gun's not on safe. If you want it to be unsafe, push that through real quick and you'll be unsafe. You can't pull the trigger, but you still shouldn't test that theory. Just because the gun's unsafe, safeties can fail sometimes. So don't go pointing it at somebody and pulling the trigger because it's on safety. Not a smart idea. Gun can fail, the safety can fail. It's just a mechanical component in the gun. And it can go bad like anything else. So if you want to know that your gun is unloaded, unload your gun. Like this one's unloaded. There's nothing in the chamber, nothing in the magazine. I know it's unloaded. I'm still going to point. I'm not even going to point at the camera because that's how skittish I am about it. You don't ever want to point this at anybody. Even if somebody's on the other side of that wall. Like right now, my brother is in the living room. He's on the other side of that wall. I'm not going to point this gun at the living room wall because I don't want it to go off and go through the wall and hit somebody I don't want to hit. So that is why you want to practice good gun safety. And that guy's going to go down. And that pretty much concludes my video. I hope that this helped some people because it was pretty alarming the amount of people who came in and didn't know anything about guns, didn't know any gun safety. I had one guy ask where the bullet comes out on a gun. So he was looking at a gun to buy and he says, "Hey man, where's the bullet come out?" Meaning when you pull the trigger, where does it exit the firearm? And I didn't sell that guy a gun because I told him he should probably go take a class, watch some videos, get some basis of knowledge first. But I couldn't do that with everybody. It was pretty obvious. A lot of people were uncomfortable handling a firearm. I tried to take my time at the store those days, which a lot of my colleagues did too, to lay down a basis of knowledge. But that's one of the reasons that I chose to make this video. I cleared it with my teachers first, and it should be going up online soon. But if you're one of those people who is scared of guns even, didn't buy a gun during all this, but you've always been curious about it, the best way to do it is get around somebody who knows what they're doing. Take a buddy, have them take you to the range, use their guns, rent guns from a gun range, something like that, or take a class. They're really nothing to be afraid of if you practice good gun safety and you know how the gun operates. You don't want to be the guy who doesn't know what they're doing and accidentally damages someone they love, or damages someone they don't even know, or damages your home and look like a fool kind of. Don't be that person. Take the time. They can be dangerous if they're in the wrong hands, and you want to make sure that your hands aren't the wrong hands if you're buying one. So take the time, get to know them, and you should have a pretty fun and you should have a pretty secure home, and you should be pretty safe. So thanks for taking the time to listen to me. Have a good day.